hopefully this time around, the power, I don't want to jinx it, but the power should stay up so we can actually have the podcast for a change. Uh, Stuff beyond our control last time, but here we are, Chapelman and myself, bringing you the latest, well, the week's news, not necessarily the latest, and discussion on video games. And we're going to be talking yet again about crunch because the people over at Star Citizen decided that they were going to try to force their employees to work through a snowstorm with no power and therefore no way of doing that. But yeah, that's just the way things are, I suppose, in the video game industry. So here we are. So
Oh,
let's get everything started, shall we? So let's start with the news, such as it is. Let's start over our friends at PC Gamer. This is one is interesting. I probably would fit this. Games as service stuff, which is part of what we're going to be talking about today. Uh, Todd Howard quoted, "There was very little we didn't screw up on Fallout 76 launch." By Jonathan Bolden 3 days ago. Howard thinks Microsoft resources will help Bethesda prevent future launch mishaps. But didn't you guys have like massive resources before? The problem
yeah.
wasn't
And
that.
and whatever happened to it's not the way the game launches, it's what it becomes at the end, or some crap
Mm,
that he spewed.
yeah, I guess now he can pass it on to Microsoft. Well, we didn't have the resources, so new narrative for everybody who wants to talk about this. Uh, Quoted from the article, in a live stream conversation between Xbox and Bethesda executives today about their newfound partnership, because it was this week became official that Bethesda was part officially uh, of Microsoft. So, Bethesda Game Studio Director Todd Howard was blunt about the state of Fallout 76 when it came out in 2018 when we came to launch. The litany of issues we had, and we let a lot of people down. And while there was very little we didn't screw up, honestly. Yeah, you've done this before, Howard. Yeah, that's why people think you're a liar. You're like the what's I always say talk about the launch of Trouble multiplayer RPG. Well, the thing was that you were not, prepared to do a live service, and you screw it up. That's basically what happened. Uh, Howard, moving on with Howard surprised by that being available on Game Pass at launch would have made Fallout 76 first month much easier. Howard had previously stated that he regrets not having a free beta for Fallout 76. He also said that it was a business model. Game Pass made more viable certain kinds of games that a studio like Bethesda might have hesitated to develop in the past. Fallout 76 came to Game Pass in July 2020. Oh yeah, because you have already an included subscription model, so it kind of covers the cost, I guess.
Yeah, I guess
So
it's
it's interesting how to make a modern MMO Lite without charging uh, monthly subscriptions. Oh, this is interesting. And now that it hits me, it's very interesting because what used to be the model for MMOs, you pay a monthly subscription. That fell by the wayside because people were, especially around 2008, because of the both the tech crunch and
the
the great,
housing bubble.
the Great Recession, as it was known.
Oh,
Yeah, not only the housing bubble that actually hurt a lot of people as well. That sort of precipitated stuff. There was a tech crunch. There was a housing bubble, and then ultimately the Great Recession. So people stopped wanted to pay for what they thought was frivolous monthly cost. Uh, Fine. So what happened? A lot of these games move into what now can be considered the live service model of microtransactions, with free and a pay monthly, either one-time payment and or monthly payment to it. Like I think the Sky, not Skyrim, the Elder Scrolls MMO, which isn't officially an MMO, has has microtransactions and a one-time pay thing. I believe that's how it works. But now, if you put a live service, which I like to call it MMO Lights, in a subscription service like Game Pass, Microsoft, which now is the owner of the company, they get their subscription costs. I mean, Game Pass offers more than one game. Granted, that's true. So you get that, but then you can still say we're going to charge microtransactions because the actual game, i.e., uh, Fallout 76, is quote unquote, actually, it's not even free. You have to pay for it.
So fee to pay game.
So free to play game with microtransactions, and now has it's part of a subscription model. Wow. I mean, they are gonna try to rake in the dough no matter what, I guess. It's like all the excuses for why you have microtransactions are gone because it's they're gone. He tied the story Fallout 76 launch with this ongoing relationship with Microsoft, saying that at the time he called Phil Spencer, he head of the Xbox branch. Spencer put Howard in touch with people at Xbox who were able to aggregate data about similar games to help Bethesda focus on solving the most pressing issues. So they didn't do a proper study even before that? Interesting, Howard rounded off his comments by noting that Fallout 76 is now one of the most played games on Xbox. There's also there's a news because that we were to talk about that last week, but we didn't. So games as Xbox exclusives. Yes. Yeah. Let's go to Eurogamer because it's the news. Phil Spencer says uh, future Bethesda games will be exclusive to platforms where Game Pass exists. So that means Xbox and PC, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't think PlayStation allowing for their. I mean, I guess they could, but they also have their own service, so people would want to pay double. The question everyone is being yet to answer since news broke that Microsoft was acquiring Bethesda parent company ZeniMax Media last year, and now Xbox head Phil Spencer has clarified Microsoft's standard exclusivity for future Bethesda games. Speaking as part of tonight's lengthy Xbox and Bethesda roundtable event, Spencer chose to address the issue directly. I see it in the community, I listened to the podcast and all the questions, so I'm going to try and be as clear as I can because I just think it's fair. Obviously, I can sit here and say every Bethesda game is an Xbox exclusive because we know that's not true, he explained. The contractual obligations that we're going to see through, we have games that exist on other platforms, and we're going to go and support those games on the platforms they're on. The communities of players, we love those communities, and we'll continue to invest in them, and even in the future, they might be either contractual things or legacy or different platforms that we'll do. So we'll keep supporting it because we have to, for legal reasons. But he continues, but if you're an Xbox customer, the thing I want you to know is that this is all about delivering great. So the new games, essentially older games that exist on the platforms, they will continue to support them, as they did with Minecraft. But
Yeah.
moving forward, they're gonna go, yeah, whatever. It's gonna be Xbox first or Game Pass first, which means that if you want to play them on the PC, you're probably gonna have to get Game Pass as well.
Yeah, and I don't like foresee. I think some people probably at say like the beginning of the last console generation with the Xbox One would have probably wondered, been speculating like, oof, the Xbox One's not doing as great. The PlayStation 4 is like kicking its ass. I wonder if they're going to become like the new Nintendo or something. Like, or not Nintendo, the new Sega, where they kind of stopped doing consoles and maybe focus on games and game development.
They
But
might.
I don't foresee that anytime soon. As long as the Xboxes are selling, the way it seems like the Xboxes are just like a sort of like a just a product for their or just like a stepping stone for their main product, which is going to be the service, the subscription service. Because I think in some way, like you want to give some people who don't know much about making computers and maybe don't have like a phone that can probably handle like streaming games on it, like a way that an easy setup for them to access their service.
Well, it's the thing about you remember the idea we talked between power outages last week. We mentioned the Steam Box,
Mm-hmm.
which the original idea of the Steam Box was actually copying Apple by having a device that serve as a
Like
gateway to
the Apple TV, wasn't it?
the Apple TV and other Apple devices. The idea was to get you into the ecosystem, which is still a phrase that's being used in terms of use, right? The idea is to get everybody into the Xbox ecosystem. So we talked about this about the turn of the century, that the turn of the century, turn of the year, the strategies that each console maker was going to take. And I think I mentioned that the strategy for Xbox was service first, right? It's
Yeah.
all about getting people in the service because I think they, as you mentioned, they kind of gave up on the idea for a long time ago of like outselling PlayStation or Nintendo. It's all about getting people hooked on into the service. Doesn't matter where they come from. So having the Xbox, like I said, it's a ready box that people can just plug in. Well, technically they can do that, but with mods and upgrades and all that, it's becoming more PC-like by the second. So who knows? But yeah, it's about getting people into the ecosystem, right? Because they want to do it on, streaming. They want to be able to do it on the mobile phone, etc. It's all about getting people to play their games in their system, particularly to pay that Game Pass money. It's all about the subscription, which is, I guess, what Google tried to do with Stadia, but Google being Google, they screwed up.
Yeah, it's like it wouldn't be the first time where say a company was ahead of its curve, like we mentioned the Steam box. Like maybe
Mm.
that was probably way ahead of its time. Or my favorite ahead of its time, the PlayStation Vita was way too ahead of its time.
I think what happened
And
with the yeah, sorry, go ahead.
and then like the Stadia is kind of the opposite though. It's not ahead of its time. It's well, maybe it will be. I guess I can't say that for sure. Maybe at some point down the line, we will look back at the Stadia. You know, the Stadia was ahead of its time. I doubt it, but maybe
Well,
it's trying too hard to set a trend to maybe to be ahead of its time or something.
Well, I don't think it is ahead of its time because we already have diskless consoles,
Yeah.
right? And I'm betting when people, we're probably going to be seeing by next Christmas, people saying, "Oh, how many?" They're going to compare last Christmas, this Christmas, especially. Hopefully, most of this current unpleasantness with COVID fades away with vaccination and the like. And which reminds me, I got to schedule my vaccination and get vaccinated, kids. And that's what they're already going for, right? The box that doesn't need a disc, which means essentially you're not necessarily streaming service because this has been attempted before. A couple of streaming services that came out either were bought up by Microsoft and PlayStation. They have their own streaming services, so that was already there. And one can argue that the discless, console is a step in that direction because while you don't not live streaming your games, you have to be subscribed to the service anyway. So there's that, right? And subscriptions and the like. So no, I think it's just bad implementation. And
Yeah.
like anything else that depends on the internet, it depends on the also on the infrastructure. If you can't get if the infrastructure is not there in the United States and many places around the world, it might be there in South Korea, it might be there inclusively in China, some European countries, but not across the world, and certainly not in the United States or North America. So, you know, the software and hardware has already been there for a while. The problem is, it's like what we're doing right now. This whole video thing. Video phones have been around since the 1960s at least, if not earlier. That literally you could buy a video phone. The problem was that the infrastructure wasn't there because transmitting voice and video over copper wire was very expensive because they didn't have the capacity, right?
Yeah.
So that's it. And the same thing happened with like streaming video, like YouTube. You could do it. There was some early technology there. The computers could kind of handle it in the 1990s, but you were using dial-up modems and copper wire still to transmit. So it wasn't the 2000s when most people moved to high-speed modems and high-speed internet connections that it makes sense to have at least low latency to no latency YouTube stream.
Yep.
So it's more. It's always. I think it's always been infrastructure. Technology's always been there, uh, and and get to the point where we do have video phones,
Yeah.
and we have this, which is a video conference call, which is a video phone thing. So
Yeah, and that's the thing too, like oh my I see my like I guess like my boomer like family using stuff like that. Like using FaceTime and using technology like that. So it's not like not like it's something that's niche. It's almost become pretty much a part of everyday life now,
Mhm.
especially during this time. But even before 2019, it was pretty much just a common thing.
Yeah. Again, I think it's more of a combination of marketing and infrastructure, not technology.
Yeah.
Like VR, it's there. We're talking about VR, but the marketing is not there because prices are out there. It's not in a way that people go like, yes, I want to. This is a necessary device that I should have. And it goes, oh, sorry about that. Just a moment. Be right back.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone remember
Hello.
the
Dime qué pasó.
those YouTube of the advertising on it of
Okay.
with the weird like store
Okay.
and floating up with like the crazy
Uh,
hair and
okay.
stuff. It's
Bye
like
bye.
it's gonna be the mega ultra experience. No, it wasn't. It was not.
Sorry, folks. Uh, it was my dad. Tomorrow, I gotta go with him to go get chemo, and it is what it is. Third treatment. Hopefully, he'll be done by next week, and we'll see what happens. But crossing our fingers. So now, real life being what it is, I
So yeah, so
want to.
the best advertisement that I guess I saw was that the very stylistic but pretty much no substance advertisement with like the guy going to the gaming store and there's like the big guy with the floofy hair and it's all flying. It's very colorful and mega like he's going like Super Saiyan as he's talking about the Stadia. And unfortunately, it did not deliver on that. Not at all.
Yeah. So we continue with the news. Some sad news. Rockstar Leeds founder Gordon Hall dies at age 51. This is by
Oh,
Molly Taylor over it was 2 days ago over at PC Gamer. Hall led development a handful of titles like GTA Chinatown Wars and Liberty City Stories. For people who know that, those are the side quests. Most of them actually were there for the Vita. In fact,
yeah,
I,
the
I wish
the
I wish
spin-offs.
Liberty City Stories had been released for the Xbox and the PC. It never was. There was Liberty City Stories, for example, not Liberty City Stories, but the Vice City Stories had even Phil Collins do a concert in the game. So
Hmm. I wasn't that on the PlayStation 2, I
yeah,
think.
they were in the place. They were for originally for the Vita, and then they've got it ported for the PlayStation, but they never got ported to Xbox or PC.
Hmm.
And in
Yeah,
fact,
just like yeah, because I recall my Walmart days. Every kid wanted to freaking buy like this Grand Theft Auto collection, which I think had Vice City, had stories from Liberty City, and I think something else too. It's like three games put in one. I was like
yeah,
the only one that was actually following policies like you're an adult, and then you're also supposed to say, so this game is rated, M for blah and blah blah. Are you sure you want to buy this game for your kid?
yeah, of course. Okay,
Yeah, most people actually say no, like once you actually explain it to like what's in the game. But I've
yeah,
had like one or two say yes, and it's like, okay, boop, there you go. No
yeah,
judgment
fair.
for me.
Mhm. Uh, and Gordon Hall, founder, as reported by Game Industry News, began circulating about Yorkshire development scene where Hall was based. The cause of death are not being released. While Hall did not spend much time in the PC gaming scene, he contributed toward many handheld ports and licensed adaptations during his career. What else included GBA version of Max Payne, which left Rockstar President Sam Houser very impressed and led to their acquisition and rebranding of Rockstar Leeds in 2004. Under Hall, Rockstar Leeds released games like Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars, which was a top-down throwback to the first two GTAs, and GTA Liberty City Stories, with Hall also working on the development of Red Dead Redemption and Rockstar San Diego. Hall remained president of Rockstar Leeds until 2011, when he left to focus on research for player psychology and microtransaction strategy.
Hmm.
Richard the industry to the chief executive of Activision Blizzard Mobile. When I read that, I go like, well, it's sad that he's dead, I guess.
Yeah,
51 is young though, but it's like, ooh,
yeah,
the sins. You carry your sins to the grave, my friend. I'm sorry, I just had to say that. I mean, I know it's harsh for me to say that because I'm alive and he's not, but still. Um, for Stardew Valley players like myself, there's some news. This Stardew Valley mod lets, well, I don't mind this at all, but it's not directly at me, but it's a cool feature. The Stardew Valley mod lets you have a best friend instead of a wife by Molly Taylor,
Oh.
because not every character arc needs to end in romance. Turns out it was up on the grid bowl training. I had time to dinner with my best friend. Aw. If you're a romantic, relationship in games can suddenly be a welcome addition. Either that or you want to experience the full offering of each character arc without having to wine and dine them all. Or you're bitterly single. Eh. Well, thankfully, Stardew Valley has a mod that lets you toggle platonic relations with your Pelican Town residents, thanks to PC Games and Adama Thajak Cyan. I'm not going to pronounce that. Platonic partners and friendships mod allows you to fully change the state of your relation with each of the 12 default marriage candidates. You can set the mechanism marriage options, life partners, or simple best friends. The mod also tweaks a ton of romantic dialogue where appropriate, reduces the use of the blushing portrait, and lets you designate what level you like to relationship to have. There's also the option to choose your own terms of endearment and even an asexuality mode, which removes suggested comments made by platonic partners.
Hmm.
It's a great mod that lets you go follow everybody's 8+ hard cutscenes without ending up in some complicated dating ring. You just don't fancy any romance in your game at all. Huh?
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool because then you get to it's appealing to also like people who either want to role play or who actually are asexual, and more representation is always good.
And also, I mean, that's a focus, and I absolutely adore it. But I also like friendships, like more games that
Yeah.
have friendships, right? Because that's the thing with games with romance, it's either or, right?
Yeah.
You get very intense focus on the romance, and then everybody's like, oh, well, we're just friends. It's like
Yeah.
romance should not be seen as an upgrade to friendship. It's just a different path.
Yeah.
And this mod actually does that. Like, yeah, you can be very close, right, intimate friends with people. Hell, you might even have friends with benefits. I mean, there's a lot of options out there, and the fact that this was done primarily for asexual folks, but reveals more of relationships rather than less,
Yeah.
it's absolutely awesome. So yeah, kudos for the
Yeah,
person who made this.
that's sort of like why I'm sort of playing like the part of the reason the love for all a mod on Andromeda. Like one, I do want to be able to flirt with everyone, and like just how that option, because I want my character to be very flirty. But once you kind of lock yourself in a relationship, like all the flirt options go away. It's like, why can't I just flirt? And haha. Unfortunately, it won't turn off like the jealousy thing, because
Mhm.
I'm still, even though I keep flirting, but I haven't locked into a relationship yet. Everyone like notices that I'm like flirty with other characters. I think Vetra and Cora were kind of like having like this rather tense discussion while I was driving with both of them. It's like,
Hmm.
I like you, but I also like Ryder. It's like, dude, I'm not in a romance with either of you. I've been flirting with both of you, but that's a haha kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like there's no middle ground. You can't be like sort of like that, or like you said, it's almost like you can't be really good friends with someone without sleeping with them. And that's how a lot of video games treat it. And even then, like, even though say you become super friendly like that, and then that conversation like comes up like, oh, are you interested in me? You say no. I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. And then you never like your relationship never grows past that as just platonic friends. Like you still don't get to know this person, and they won't tell you stuff other besides stuff that isn't necessarily intimate, but would be nice to know as like a friend. Like this isn't information that a lover would need to know, or just it's information that should be exclusive to a lover. But like, and it doesn't seem like it's something really personal or intimate, but you should still be able to get personal, tidbits
Well,
of them.
the way I would say is that intimacy and sexuality, or should I say sex,
Hmm.
not sexuality, something else, are not the same.
Yeah.
Usually, when you are engaged in sex, there's a high degree of intimacy because, when people get naked in front of each other, they're pretty vulnerable. And what they do in their private lives is it literally is a definition of intimate. See, if both sides want to be intimate, right? and accept that as a foundation of it, and trust and love and all those things. But being intimate is being close to someone and without requiring people, okay, fine, I'm just sure, I'm gonna take my pants off now because sex, that's a thing that I think video games haven't really managed, right? Like having, I think one of the few things I did like about the last game that I played, space game, I forgot the name of it, The Outer Worlds,
Hmm.
was that you really get into this romance by proxy. One of the characters, or one character has a romance, right? But you're like their best friend, playing shotgun to them and helping them out. It's like, yeah, and she's just asexual, right? So one romance that there is in the game, and she's asexual, and you're like, she's happy because she has somebody to share with you. She's not aromantic, she's asexual. And she is possibly glowing, and the other person is happy, and I guess they hold hands, maybe kiss. That's the extent of it, depending on how intimate they want to do. And maybe at some point they do decide both of them to have sex. That's not out of the question, although probably not something that at least one of the characters is comfortable with and may never be comfortable with. That's fine too, right? The problem also that game highlights is like, oh, okay, I want to know all these other people, but because they supposedly had romance options and they cut them off, essentially you hit that wall was like, hey, I want to talk to you, and I'm more like, yeah, I'm gonna repeat the same 5 lines. Like,
Yeah.
so even if you don't want to romance a character, you want to know more about, or you do want to romance a character, it's not there. So it's like, it's much better solution, I think, either way to the James Bonding thing that I've done as well, right?
Yeah.
That
Actually,
that
actually, that's funny because I was about to bring. It's like you can't be like Aveline from the second game where you kind of like you can play like helper matchmake and stuff. It's like,
mhm.
but I kind of don't like that you can't be like uh you can't be like this, at least like in the in game go like uh Aveline's like sassy gay like friend like, oh come on girlfriend, we're gonna set you up.
I mean, that could be an option too. I mean, I think this if games like this could manage like this mod, right? That would be the cure for me for my pet peeve with stuff like I call James Bonding, right? Where all these
Yeah.
characters exist to be just fulfilling the sexual romantic fantasy of the player, right? And kind of diminishes their weight as NPCs because they at some point that's what they're reduced to. If you can explore their lives without having necessarily ending with romance, like you probably, if you give me a chance, you've done this, you mod the games and the saves to have Garrus as a romance.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of Garrus being my diehard bro, my
Hmm.
battle bro. Like we got each other's back,
Yeah,
right?
like I don't like, I mean he does do like the at least like he still talks about like, his intimate moment. Like you still get that dialogue option where you could start hitting on him that one time, or at least like express interest in having sex with him. But at least like you still have that like, I guess that bro chill, like, oh yeah, I totally banged this woman. Ha ha ha. I don't know, like, or have her just like shooting the shit about like past experiences and stuff.
And I would, I don't know, if Remaster's not gonna do this, but it would be fun to like just go, oh yeah, bro, you did it well, or just make fun of him, like, oh, so now you're bragging. Oh, it's cool
It's like,
brag.
ooh, you've
What they
never
say about,
bla
or maybe flirt with him, or have all
or
these other options,
yeah, or
like
be like, oh, so you had that Turian, but have you ever had blue? Like
stuff
I
like that.
have
Yeah,
because I romance Liara.
it's stuff like that.
Or
Have more banter, more stuff, like, or it's like,
like another, I think a better example is Anders in the second game. So something I don't understand why. Like I don't I completely don't understand why. Why does Anders only talk about Carl, the guy that like he wants to rescue, but then he turns out to be already been tranquil, and he temporarily was able to like restore him because of vengeance, because he got mad and vengeance
mm,
came out. And then of course he begs to be killed because he doesn't want to live like that. He talks about being intimate with him and having like that experience as being like, that homosexual experience. He never brings that up with a female Hawk, or he never talks about that unless you show interest in him as a guy. Because I'm pretty sure I've romanced him as as like a femme hawk a woman hawk and no, like he won't bring it up. I don't think he ever talks about that, and it's kind of odd. Like,
Well, that's the thing because that is designed to be the James Bonding thing, right? It's designed
yeah,
to go, hey, if you're a dude and you're into other dudes, well, we're going to tell you that this character's into dudes, as opposed to be something like, yeah, this is part of who I am. I'm bisexual, right? And I had this
yeah,
experience, and I like to
which
share that with you because it's part of who I am, right?
yeah,
Regardless of
like
who they're romancing, right?
I mean, he sort of does, and I heard like a lot of people complain about this because when you finish his quest, like I think he always comes on to you no matter who which hawk you're playing as, and no matter what the previous dialogue is, he
Mm.
becomes friendly, and then you could like the only way you could decline him is you basically have the options like you keep flirting or you tell him no and he gets butthurt and he gets like plus
Yeah,
points to rivalry. Uh, I mean that was also kind of handled oddly, but I mean at there at least like he shows like, hey, either way. Well, I guess you wouldn't know that if you play as a woman, because then how are you going to know that he's been intimate with dudes unless he tells you?
yeah.
And that's the thing, like why is that like I feel like that could be personal, like, Kyle, he meant to me, we've been intimate. He's the one who showed me that, love isn't just limited to like gender or sex. Like even as if you're being romanced by a woman, like that'd be kind of interesting to get into.
I mean, that's the thing about talking about previous partners. And for example, maybe it
Yeah.
comes out that why this person was so important and you wanted to save them. It's like, yes, he was my friend, and there was more to it, right? You're talking about a previous partners. People who are in relationships talk about previous partners. That's something that comes up that
Yeah.
question.
And and even weirder is like the line after it, if you're romancing him, he's like, "Oh, is that like are you okay with that? The fact that like I've had sex previously with another man? You talk as another man who might be interested in sexual relationships with me? Is that okay?" Like, what the hell is that line? Like, what? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
are you asking me that is that like I'm not pure, I can't wear white to the wedding, I'm sorry. But like as a gay white, I guess.
I don't know. I
Because
guess
it's not like he says that to a woman hawk who's like, oh, I've had relationships, sexual relationships. Is that okay with you? Like I've had past relationships as a woman. Are you okay with that?
you know.
That doesn't come out. Like, what the hell is that?
I
I
mean,
don't.
there's also the changes from the character appears in we talk about this sort of like, oh, they didn't make him bisexual from the get go, and clearly this is a different character. It's his
Written by
character,
someone completely different.
yeah, and with vengeance and all that. With vengeance was supposed to go to another character to make more sense, but they didn't bring her. I guess they thought they would get too many L's. I don't know. It was a complete
Yeah.
mess. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I know which character you're talking about. The elf from Awakening would have made more
yeah,
sense.
that was the original plan, but apparently that
Oh,
got tape six. It just died in discussions. So there's that. Talking about sexuality, this is I just it really is not a game related, but I just thought, well, it is fun related, I suppose. Uh, this is from PC Gamer. Your smart sex toy could be taken over by remote or local hackers by
uh-oh.
Katie Wickens 2 days ago, and there may be some serious implications. Smart sex toys are at risk of being hacked. It sounds like the start of a bad joke, but there are some very serious implications behind the idea of people gaining access to your sex toys. We're not just talking about some simple adjustments in vibrational intensity here. Imagine being indefinitely locked into a chastity belt by an unknown remote hacker, or believing your partner is controlling the toy all just because that it is a complete stranger. According to ESET security researcher Dennis Cristo Bellic and Cecilia Pastorino, via bleeping computer, there are just some of the potential dangers of the inherent weakness we identified in smart sex toys. Many wearable sex devices today include features that go beyond just pressing the button from a distance. Being connected to your smartphone, the associated apps might allow you to remotely contact your partner via video chat and allow file transfers. Some save sensitive data like users' names, sexual orientation, and gender. Some may let you store a list of sexual partners. Oh.
Yeah, so
You
I,
know, I don't want to sound like an old curmudgeon, but there's some things that should not be connected to the internet. yours, or any sex toys that are used out there should be, not non-digital as much as possible. You
Yeah.
know, just
So
for
like
safety's sake. Maybe
like
remote control will be the extent of it.
so I didn't know these existed, but I'm not surprised. It makes completely sense to the stuff I look at. So I understand because sometimes people have long distance relationships or they like that control, like being controlled by someone else online. Like that's a valid fetish and whatnot. But yeah,
Hmm.
like so it's like, oh, log into this app and here you can tickle me, as much as you want, or like, oh no, I can't touch myself unless you let me, kind of thing. But yeah, that is scary though. The fact that someone could like, you know, you steal credentials, either mess with you like that or hmm. I mean, if that's what you're into and you really want to do it, I think you have to. I guess it's good to be informed about these essential, risks with doing something like that. But it's just a shame that we live in a world where that has to be a problem in terms of like you can't people hacking and being I guess malicious like that.
Yeah, just have a very powerful VPN and some anti-hack, anti-virus software.
And that's the other thing too, like how secure can you be sure? Well, I don't want to like sound again prudish, but like how much could you trust the sex company that makes an app for sex toys and stuff or remote control? Like how secure can you be sure that their servers are and all of that?
Yeah, and also, why would the device, not, I guess when you order, you get information, but why would my device want to know my gender, my orientation, my place of birth, and all of that?
That
You
might
just
be like an
you
app
either are
thing.
let me put it bluntly, you either are a hole or you go into a hole. So you don't have to question me what I'm doing. So, Jesus Christ. I mean, it's like, um, fruit doesn't ask these questions. Let's put it that way. you know, you know. It's like, why? There's some information you shouldn't share. Oh boy. Moving on to our friends over at Kotaku. This was I found very interesting, and I think you might find it as well. Game artists not happy that developer is selling their nearly decade-old work as NFTs by Nathan Grayson. First of all, let's go what NFTs are. Uh, NFT is short for non-fungible token, a cryptographic token that is unto itself one of a kind. NFTs have been tied to images, videos, and even basketball collectibles, with some selling for millions of dollars. The image and videos can exist anywhere on Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, or whatever you have, and the original creators can still maintain rights to those works. So,
Hmm.
what are people really paying for is the token that can verifiably owned by a blockchain technology. The value of these tokens
Oh.
derive entirely from artificial scarcity, while NFTs have been around since 2019. They skyrocketed popularity in recent months, with mostly prominent established artists cashing in on unregulated, speculative market that has attracted wealthy buyers in droves. It is also winning many things related to blockchain and environmental catastrophe that is riddled with scams. Uh, Essentially, it's, yeah, the art itself can be replicated, but the token is not. So it's a sort of token of authenticity.
So
And
it's like a Bitcoin key,
mhm.
essentially.
And there was also connected to this was that, because any resale of the token, you can set it up so that it gives a percentage to the uh,
The artist.
the artist, which, I can now see every single video game manufacturer out there going like, "Well, we want to put tokens on every copy that we have, so you cannot resell them."
Or like ooh,
Or in Steam keys, for example.
or like digital art bonuses and stuff, or like art books, like money.
Yeah, but I saw another article as well where DC Comics, I think it was angry and wanted their artist, well, be former artists, to stop selling their art, their version of the art that they put, because they have a right to it. They have certain rights over the art they create, which they have fought for over the years, in recent past, as late as the 1970s. some artists that have no rights whatsoever over their own art they created for comic books. It really
Yeah.
wasn't in the 1980s into the 90s when you started these celebrity artists because they had control over their art. But if they sell them in the blockchain, they're getting a profit that Warner Brothers, or in case of Marvel, Disney, is not getting. So interesting development.
Yeah. I think didn't Jim Stephanie Sterling mention something about that in their latest video? That
I missed
people
it.
were
I did.
spending like millions of dollars on JPEGs. I
Mhm.
think it was just sort of like a throwaway thing. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
depending on stuff that again, it's not really real because this doesn't make it real. It only makes it have a crypto chain on it. Not it's complicated in a way I think it should be.
Yeah.
I'm sounding very old, but some like I said, some things don't need to be that complicated. Uh, yeah,
Digitized.
digitized. Yeah. Can you or can you print your own pizza? Well, that question sailed basically. Talking about going back
I
to
guess we'll cross that bridge when the 3D printers get that good.
yeah. Uh, let's go back to Xbox and Bethesda. But this was done Friday by Zach Zweisen over at Kotaku. Xbox FPS boost coming soon to Fallout 4 and other old Bethesda games. After launching the FPS boost feature in February with a handful of games, Bethesda announced that 5 more games all from Bethesda will soon be enjoying FPV boost support. It comes on the latest episode of the Virtual Xbox podcast and its opening section on Xbox Live. Larry Major Nelson Hybrid and Xbox Senior Communication Manager Jeff Rubenstein discussed Bethesda's recent acquisition by Microsoft. To celebrate the deal, a bunch of new Bethesda games were added to Game Pass. We already talked about that, but that was more exciting. The 5 Bethesda games that will soon be getting FPS boost support, featuring allowing all the games to run higher frame rates on Xbox X and Series S. So if you have the games and you have them in the new area, you can play them at higher FPS. Hooray!
Hooray.
Uh, which hopefully won't break the engine because many of those engines or variation of the engines are capped at 60 and they do break if you go faster. Yeah.
The creation engine.
Yeah. This is interesting. Again, by Sizewisen, there was on yesterday. Paradox Interactive announces a new digital event during a digital event. Paradox in the annual event PDXCon. Going digital this year. This announcement came today during PDX Insider, a different digital event. Due to COVID-19, PDXCon is going digital. New event is officially called PDXCon Remix. PDXCon is an annual fan showcase that Paradox Interactive has been hosted since 2017. They usually announce some big games, new updates, existing games, and tease future announcements. So if you're a fan of the products from Paradox Entertainment, Interactive, I should say, like the BattleTech game, for example, then you might want to keep an eye on that. Now for some, I guess, internal news over at Twitch. Kotaku, nothing great. Twitch's first transparency report has started, but streamers want more. Today, Twitch released its first ever transparency report, a lengthy stat-based look at the platform's safety initiatives over the past year. It contains some interesting, albeit granular information about Twitch efforts to cut down on hateful conduct, sexual harassment, and even terrorist propaganda. But it also fails to clear the haze from the questions that surround many of Twitch's most perplexing decisions. Why? Certainly, the report contains many interesting numbers. Currently, the company made a 4 times increase in the number of content moderation professionals over the past year, meaning that if users file a report, it's more likely that someone will get around to responding to in a timely manner. Twitch did not, however, say how many content moderation professionals it currently employs, nor did it say whether in-house or contractors, aka the Facebook method, which has led to all sorts of issues over the years. Which also pats itself on the back for greater moderation coverage, noting that between its auto mode software and human moderators, 95% of live content was viewed by moderators of some sort by the end of 2020. Most actions reported focus on similar increases, chat messages removed by AutoMod and the block term functionality, but which allows streamers to automatically pre-screen messages specific words and phrases, rose 61% between the first half of the year and the second. Manual message deletion on the part of creators and moderators was up to whopping 98% relatively to the first half of the year, which contributed to the elephant in the room, a 40% increase in the raw number of channels on Twitch between the two halves of 2020. Yet you still get bots in the chat anyway,
Yep.
saying you want to be famous. It's like, not this
Yeah.
way. I'm not gonna pay you for that.
I surprisingly haven't gotten those yet.
No, usually they check whether you are uh, uh you know you know you actually getting paid or not, as the case may be. And at least associates, as
Hmm.
targeting associates and above, particularly associates who want to become full partners and can be tempted into paying for a service. Now for the news of the day on the podcast. Star Citizen developers fed up after being expected to work during devastating Texas snowstorm by Nathan Grayson. That was last Thursday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. And month, the entirety of Texas ground to a halt after a colossal winter storm pushed the state cordon out power grid to the brink. Power and heat outages, as well as resulting food and water shortages, led many businesses to temporarily shut down. This included a large number of Texan video game studios. Of those that did not, however, once stopped out, Cloud Imperium Games, whose employees' confidence in the company remains shaken after they spent the week trying to juggle work and survival. The Star Citizen developer has studios all over the world, but the core of the massively co-founded MMO operation, from a technological perspective, lies deep in the heart of Texas. A statement of Kotaku sent the week of the snowstorm, CIG talked about how Austin employees have banded together to provide each other with aid, which employees speaking of Kotaku under the condition of anonymity say is true, because, functionally speaking, CIG had left them high and dry. The company concluded its statement by saying that everyone at CIG had been very understanding concerned about the situation Texas team in facing with staying constant communication. According to 6 sources from Spoken Kotaku, that part isn't true.
Hmm.
And it goes on to talk about communications, etc. But I mean, this is the ultimate form of crunch. It's like, oh, work through a snowstorm, work through a earthquake, work through a hurricane, a
No,
lava
you're
flow.
working. You're already working at home. Like,
Yes, do you hear those
no
sirens?
problem.
Oh, those are nuclear warheads coming to your location. Could you please finish that line of code before the bombs explode? Thank you. Jesus Christ. And the reason I want to highlight this, not only because of crunch, it also comes. Star Citizen is one of those games that becomes a confluence of all the things that I consider to be wrong with the video game industry. The game that is what 6, 7 years in the making and still hasn't finished. It has a bunch of bloat because they keep adding stuff, first-person shooter mode and ships and all that. Huge. On top of being the game that has made the most money in crowdfunding, right? You could already make like 2 or 3 games for that amount of money already, working all the records. It charges hideous amounts for kind
DLC
of
and ships.
DLC and microtransactions. I mean, yeah, I think let's look at Star Citizen. Star Citizen most expensive. Yeah, the game actually
Autofill.
autofilled. Let's say 2020. The Javelin is the most expensive and precious ship in Star Citizen today. A Javelin costs $2,500 per ship. For all 200 ships of the original run have been sold. I mean, the fact that they're selling you ships at $2,500 a pop.
And there was limited to only 200, and people actually bought it. That's
Yeah,
$500,000.
just in that. Why? Well, we know why. Money,
Cha-ching.
greed. Why you're working in the middle of a snowstorm? Uh, because reasons. Because we need to keep. It's an MMO, right? It's well, one can argue that it's an MMO that has a very. It won't be finished because it's an MMO. So it started as just a solid game and transformed itself into an MMO to justify itself being still there. I mean, fuck. I'm kind of speechless here, to be honest. And
Uh, it's just I don't know if part of it's also if they're working at home and it's like a hey, like you should have an excuse because it's not like you have to drive in the snow to get to the office. It's not like we're making you do that. If that's the case, like if they just happen to have everyone working from home, but like what do they expect you to do if like oh you should have planned ahead and have like a power generator for to power your modem in your computer.
The thing is that Texas, the homes are not winterized. The pipes were breaking. So even if your home was okay, let's say that your home for some reason didn't, snow didn't just freeze the interior of the house as happens sometimes, right? Because you can't keep the heat in, right? And all the electronics are working, so and you still have power. You might not have water.
Yeah.
So, because the pipes burst because they froze and they broke on the ground. And you say, well, on the ground. Yeah, the pipes, the thing is that the pipes are not deep enough to avoid, the surface frost. They break because they freeze. The water can't pass. It starts freezing. The pressure of the water coming in. Pipe breaks. No water. No water for you to drink. No water for you to go to the toilet, to take a shower. By the way, did we forget that we're in a pandemic as well?
Yep.
You're not
That's
supposed.
on top of everything.
Yeah, so this is freak weather, act of God, whatever.
And that's the thing. I live in Arizona. Like our older homes also don't have like a lot of their pipes are exposed and outside. Like even at my work, like the housing for the kennels, like all the pipes are exposed on the outside. They're not built in. Granted, like with ours, like they cover them in like foam or like insulation and covered in like aluminum, like wrapped in aluminum, so they're insulated. Like, and fortunately, my house, like the only exposed piping it has is just like just a little bit on the outside that just kind of like runs from the ground and into the wall,
Yeah,
and
I
it
mean
just has a
that's
little access for me to turn it off and on.
yeah, and I mean even that, if it's small sections of it,
Yeah,
the water pressure will keep and the flowing water will should keep it warm enough that it doesn't freeze. But we're talking about most of the infrastructure, like things that are running between
yeah,
sewer
like
lines and all of that, right? That's the pipes that are high capacity pipes that are below ground that serve, like, hey, okay, maybe the main water main didn't break. Okay, what about the sewer line? Oh, you get water in, but if you go to the bathroom, you can't press the toilet. It's gonna back up again in a frozen, horrible mess,
yep,
which is going to just probably destroy your toilet in the process,
and
right?
destroy potentially
Flood your house as
dis
well.
yeah, destroy your sewage line through the
Yeah.
sewage.
So, and may have repercussions somewhere else. I saw one vintage gamer who lives in Texas, like, yeah, the roof part of he built a new office for his, to do his show. Guess what happened? The roofs collapsed
Oh,
because it wasn't winterized.
yeah, it's not meant to support snow.
Yeah, it's not meant to support snow, right? And even if it's like concrete, again, if it's not winterized, what tends to happen? This is what happens to concrete. Concrete tends to trap air bubbles, and what happens is, well, two things. If it's just concrete, like cement blocks, heat and cold, the air's bubbles expand and contract. So, for example, under intense heat, what tends to happen is, and even under intense cold as well, they crack, they break apart. If it's reinforced concrete, which essentially means has basically rebar, which are metal tube, metal, not even tubes, they're just metal pieces, right? Lines. Water comes into it and it gets rusted. So it contracts when it gets very cold and it gets a little warm. It opens up just a little bit. Water comes in, it freezes and starts rusting that piece, and that's where it starts to break. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong here if your homes are not winterized, right? Winterizing a home seems rather simple, right? You put the pink stuff in the walls and you cover it and you build a relatively light material. I mean, if I always said if a freeze would come here to Puerto Rico, nobody's here. And also you also might have family members and stuff like that are also like your grandma or your kids could literally freeze to death while they're trying to sleep. Because, they just have what, some covers or something. They don't even have portable heaters. People who don't know what, or people who do know what real cold is, but don't know the other side, or people who don't know what real cold is, can relate.
Yeah, like it can get really cold here in Arizona, but
Mhm.
I don't think we'd be prepared if it just snowed overnight. Like, and not like we've had it snow here before, like, but where it shouldn't snow, but it's just like little bits of snow. It's not even enough to make a little pile on the ground.
Yeah.
So it has gotten that cold, but like I don't think we would be prepared to handle snow, like an inch of snow.
Yeah, we're talking about a snowstorm here. It was a snowstorm. It covered most of
Yeah.
the state. So, and that's another thing, the weight of snow. Uh, Even as the snow melts, it creates slush, right? Or if it's ice patches, slush, or just flooding. Because if it melts very quickly, because temperatures go back up very quickly, again, those pipes that are already frozen, now they're going to have an influx of rainwater and snow turning into water. I mean, and then going anywhere. Okay, I don't have heat. I got to get a heater. I'm going to go and have a line outside of Target, whatever, for maybe they have heaters. Maybe they don't sell them because it's not the market. It's a lot of things. It's just the attitude of like, yeah, you can keep go working. Like instead of going like, okay, we're gonna check the situation, give you 72 hours at least, 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. We're keeping an eye on this. We're gonna check, and we're gonna check back to you in 2 or 3 days, right? But again, games as service, you got to keep that service going, right? So I suspect that a lot of that stuff that were there was keeping the service as well.
Come on, people. What?
You got to work,
Just because you're snowed in doesn't mean that that
and
people aren't still playing the game.
I'm not expecting you to serve, give them a service for the equivalent of the $2,500 ship that they just bought. It's it's problems that are generated by bad business models and bad attitudes. You know, and I think the problem is that the designer behind Star Citizen, he hit it big back in the early 1990s with Wing Commander.
Hmm.
And Wing Commander was a game that was essentially designed to be one of these first truly. It was in the turn 80s and the early 90s when you started seeing some game designers saying, "Oh, we want to make our games cinematic." He even went off to make a movie based on Wing Commander, which no,
Yeah, and didn't the third one have a lot of like live action filming with
yeah,
like big stars as
yeah.
well?
Mark Hamill was in it, and some other stars, which was that was video was becoming more popular and stuff like that. But he always sort of wanted to make this sort of cinematic approach to video games, and and that was his dream. And now that I think he has the technology, he's sort of like this is the one game that he wants to make. Uh, and I'm like, okay, fine, but you gotta at some point you gotta go, dude, just stop. Just let it be. Just this is what you get, and this is
Uh,
great, and
the
move on to something else, right?
David Cage or the Kojima effect.
But now because he's fueled by people that are keep willing to pay more and more money in the form of Patreon and all that, as well as there's
Imagine if
microtransactions, yeah.
Can you imagine if Kojima had like a PayPal donate button or David Cage?
Yeah, they would be
We're
probably
gonna
the same.
cram all the emotions and all the polygons in
And
our
all the
character.
emotions, we're gonna cram them into the new polygons. It's gonna be beautiful, beautiful, I tell you.
We're
Beautiful.
gonna reinvent the polygon.
Yeah, they'd probably be in the same situation, you know, uh, because they would just want to make bigger and bigger games and tweak and
Oh,
change uh, to have their perfect
oh,
vision. Yeah.
Kojima would probably be like, donate to my my PayPal. It's like maybe I'll put something out, maybe I won't. Who knows? It'll be a
One day.
surprise. One
Yeah.
day.
And I get all these Hollywood stars to be in it, and they say, yeah, they're gonna be in it, and they're gonna, say glorious stuff about them. But yeah, their agents are going to be asking for $1 million per episode or whatever it is that they or 5 million or 20 million. It's like, yeah, Yeah, you get your Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel Jackson's not going to show up and just do it for like $5. He's not going to do that. He's in the 20, 30, $40 million range. And so, what are you going to pay me? Where's my money, bitch?
That it's a quarter of a million per line.
Or something like, I don't know the exact rates of, but that's the thing, right? And yeah, somebody's got to tell these directors. In fact, I use the term director. Uh, enough is enough. Ambition is great, but if it doesn't have an endpoint, it's just dumb. And again, we've seen the employees suffer because of it unnecessarily. So
Yeah. There was somebody of like a small time reviewer was talking about. It's like I think we need to get away from the idea of a starving artist or like the tortured artist mentality that you have to be in pain or be suffering in order to put out good art. That's not the case. That we need to move away from that mentality. Like you have to put in blood, sweat, and tears to produce art. Like, no, why? Why do we need to do that?
yeah, it basically is used as an excuse to justify this stuff, right?
Yeah, to
The
justify other people's suffering and not necessarily their own. Or
Yeah,
maybe even to justify their own suffering.
yeah. What was the creator behind The Last of Us 2, right? His answer to any criticism was like, "Oh, but we had this great vision, and the people worked very, very hard." It's like, yeah, but you exploited your workers and you delivered massive amounts of crunch, and got essentially what's a buck standard game with a lot of violence and graphics and story tagged on it that said, whatever you were doing was wrong. It's like, yeah, I played that before. It's called Specs Up the Line. I mean, that's another thing. It's like, yeah, I've seen this before, and in many ways done better. So, yeah, no. Yeah, no, no, yeah, you're right. I think that should be the final line of that. We have to get away from the suffering artist excuse to justify all this bullcrap because that's what it is. Bullshit. And with that, we finish our podcast. Shabamon, where can we
Yep.
find you on the interwebs?
You can find me at Chapelmon pretty much anywhere. I'm Chapelmon underscore here on Twitch and on Twitter, but my content primarily lives on YouTube. Just search Chapelmon and you'll find me.
And of course, you can find me here Monday through Fridays. I'm streaming now Yakuza 4, having a blast. I'm a bit confused with what decisions they made so far, but I'm going to keep playing all the way to Yakuza 5. And then after that, I don't know. Tonight, I don't think we're going to have our D&D game tonight, but I usually have a D&D game every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Because remember, for those, I know neither of us do this, but you might be in the United States having to do this, that you have to change your clocks tonight at 9 o'clock because daylight saving times is coming for you, baby. So yeah, which means I have to actually change whenever I make announcements because I have to make sure that I don't include the 2 times anymore. Yay! So yeah, 6 o'clock over Raktus, Raktus over on Twitch or here on Twitch. And you want more content from us? Just check us out. We're here, and I want to say thank you and hi for everybody who's been supporting Chapamon's rise to be an affiliate over at Twitch and also following on Twitter, on YouTube. You guys are awesome. It's
Thank
good
you,
to see.
everyone.
It's good to see that people are supporting Chapelmon on this. So I'm grateful for him and through him.
Thank you, everyone.
So take care. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.